Hello, everybody. Welcome to Week 5's kickoff match here at Hearthstone Grandmasters for the Americas. Today is May 15th, 2020. Now, on this day in history, just a little bit over 100 years ago, the first flights to the new U.S. air mail service begins between Washington, Philadelphia, and New York. That one took a little bit of effort to finish, TJ, but it was well worth it. And so, 100 years later, we are now providing you some great service through Grandmasters premier esports entertainment featuring bloodyface versus lnguahackr. So TJ, heading into the series, we hyped it up a little bit. 2 undefeated players, newcomer versus a player that's kind of just been on fire since 2018. What can we expect from this head-to-head here?
Well, lnguahackr is bringing Highlander Priest, which we might see this series. Warrior has been banned on both sides, which is expected. It seems like lnguahackr's target with a lot of his decks will be the Zoo Warlock, which bloodyface does have in his list. He's running kind of the hybrid with Wolf Riders that he had last week. But both players have Face Hunter as well. A couple different versions of Face Hunter, but Face Hunter nonetheless. lnguahackr is a little bit faster. It runs the Leopard Gnomes at the 1 slot as well as Rapid Fire, and does top out at 3 with Eagle Horn, Bow, Kill Command, and Unleash the Hounds, whereas bloodyface has a little bit heavier of a curve with the Dragon Bane plus Scrap Shot. He also runs like an Imprisoned Felmaw as opposed to the Cobalt Sand Troopers. Slight differences. I think that lnguahackr has overall the more potential for raw damage, but if he doesn't get off to a fast start, and bloodyface has just kind of bigger minions that if they stick, that could be a downfall for lnguahackr. But overall, I mean, it's a Face Hunter mirror, so it's going to be quick, and whoever gets off to that fast start is going to have that advantage because they'll be on the play, be able to react to their opponent, be able to start getting damage points in early. So we'll see. It's a good match to start things off with.
Right. Face Hunter mirrors. TJ, I've played dozens of games waiting for this day to start. TJ, I was watching Europe. I was like, all right, 3rd series out of 4, start to get ready. Just play a couple of games to warm up, but you never know when the series will end dramatically very quickly. So I started to play some Face Hunter instead. And you know what, TJ? I've played over 30 games while waiting for that Priest mirror to end. So lots of action is possible when you can play Face Hunter. Games last for a few minutes, so don't blink. Don't hold your breath. This is going to be very quick and explosive. However, players do want to take their time. The one thing that I've kind of discovered over the course of playing Face Hunter for the past few days is that the first 2.5 turns or so are so crucial, and if you mess it up, you can just lose by turn 3. In the sense that the game will be too far gone, and you've already gone down the wrong path. So I think when it comes to Face Hunter, you have to take extra time, even though you have less seconds than you traditionally do on the first turn in a game of Hearthstone.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, turn 3, you may lose the game based on your plays, but you're also pretty close to losing the game based on your health total. I mean, I jammed out 2 Hunter mirrors during the break that we just had, and that was 3.5 minutes.
Oh, that's right.
So, but yeah, it's bloodyface has the kind of better 1-drop in this scenario, just because he can have some semblance of early board control. Now, board control doesn't matter too much once you get past turn 3 or 4, and lnguahackr's just going to play on curve. There was the other option of Arcane Shot Rapid Fire to protect his Worgen Infiltrator and then save the Face Stalker to be able to push out the Explosive Trap guaranteed on turn 4. But he realized that if bloodyface spent his whole turn 2 hero powering and trading over the Face Stalker, lnguahackr would be able to get a lot of damage in. The Eagle Horn Bow comes down as the punish, though, and we'll see if that's going to be a big enough punish. So, I mean, it's never too early to start counting damage in this matchup, Dan.
It's not. There was times where I would play a 1 mana minion versus TJ in our playtest session. And then TJ would play a minion, and I say, okay, guess I'm on the burn plan. Things start really quickly. Like, you can't...
Yep.
I'm like, well, I lost the board, that's it. I guess I should start burning him to death. And, like, started, like, okay, never trading, going face. And that sounds kind of like a meme, but in reality, that's ended up happening fairly often here.
Whew. Well, I mentioned some of the differences in the list. Scrap Shot being one of them that Bloodyface runs. Scrap Shot, similar effect to the Scavenger's Ingenuity, where you draw a beast and give it +3/+3. Scrap Shot deals 3 damage and gives a random beast in your hand +3/+3. So that's why Bloodyface went ahead and picked the Stone Tusk Boar from the tracking, just to make sure he had a nice on-curve play next turn with Scrap Shot and could buff the Stone Tusk Boar for some serious damage. And Scrap Shot can also go face, even though it's not the most efficient straight-up damage, 4 mana for 3 damage. You can bank the additional damage by buffing it onto a Stone Tusk Boar or a Phase Stalker, which are the 2 beasts that are normally played in these Face Hunter decks. So.
Scrap Shot has impressed me a lot. I think that this card, particularly with Stone Tusk Boar, has been proven to be very powerful, both as reach and just as opportunity to maybe even leverage your board. And one thing that's nice is that, like you were talking about, it can sometimes just be direct damage. You don't have to always activate it, and as a Face Hunter, you do tend to struggle with spending your mana as the game continues to develop. So I do appreciate what Scrap Shot brings to the table. Now, that being said, Bloodyface can finally get his damage rolling.
Oh, yeah.
Been playing defense for quite some time. And just like that, it catches up in the health total, and Language Hacker has to respond.
Yeah. There's small things in this matchup that can also make a difference. Language Hacker equipped the Eaglehorn bow last turn, but did not attack. Really, the only reason to attack with the Eaglehorn bow in that situation is, 1, if you have the second Eaglehorn bow in hand, or 2, if you're trying to set up for some sort of 2-turn lethal, at least in the mirror matchup. Otherwise, the swing doesn't really do anything. Maybe it makes your opponent slightly more scared because they're at a lower life total. But if you're not killing them over 2 turns, you might as well keep that swing to make sure that your turns are efficient. Now, he could get punished by that by drawing another Eaglehorn bow, which I'm not sure if he's going to pick with tracking here. But this is an interesting option as well. Does he think that the game is going to go on long enough for these toxic reinforcements to be worth it? Which would mean that the game would have to last 3 additional turns. The hero power this turn, the 2 hero powers after that, plus the turn where you get to trade in the Leopardomes. And Language Hacker says no. I don't think that that's going to be the case. So I'm just going to pick the Unleash the Hounds, because my opponent seems like he's in a situation where he's a bit wider on board, and I have a kill command in hand that I need to activate. So I like the choice there. A lot of players could say, oh, Toxic Reinforcements, that's just the most efficient straight-up damage. It makes my hero powers effectively do 2 additional damage every turn. But you have to realize how fast this matchup can end once you're in that position. And notably, when your opponent has a 4-attack beast on board, 2 kill commands in hand. And I probably just kill command hero power, and then set up for the Stone Tusk Boar kill command hero power next turn. And that would be enough damage.
Yeah, I think that when people look at a card like Toxic Reinforcements, they immediately just try to associate the amount of damage as being dealt. But one thing that I like about Toxic Reinforcements is that it really does, speak as a devil, require you to be able to see what the game looks like in 3 turns. Yes, it is by all means a great way to put out 12 effective damage through the form of Leopard Gnome, Death Rattles, and the hero power, and maybe some upside beyond. But, for example, Language Hacker, if he played Toxic Reinforcements right now, cleared the board every single turn, and didn't take any direct damage from hand, then he would be able to activate Toxic Reinforcements. In this case, that card feels very useless to Language Hacker. That could be quite possibly one of his worst draws in this spot. And he still has to deal with the Stone Tusk Boar. he might be in a position where he has to hope that bloodyface doesn't have direct damage from the hand.
I have no time for games.
And maybe just start to play really risky versus his opponent.
Yeah.
And you see that Language Hacker is not even committing the toxic reinforcements because holding an extra card might mess with bloodyface's calculations. Because he knows that he's not going to be able to get to that point where he gets the benefit off of the Leopard Gnome. By the time the Leopard Gnome will be able to even attack, as this game is coming to a conclusion, by the time the Leopard Gnomes will be able to attack, bloodyface would have hero-powered Language Hacker 4 times. So, yeah, that's going to do it. Bloodyface takes that first game, and despite Language Hacker getting off to a little bit of a faster start, you can see the explosive power of Face Hunter if it starts to get rolling, and more importantly, the patience shown by bloodyface to not get over antsy and be able to respond accordingly to those threats.
Yeah, I really like the plays there by bloodyface to pick the Stone Tusk board from tracking with Scrap Shot in hand. Some players can, kind of get greedy and maybe pick something with more immediate strength. But that Stone Tusk board ended up dealing 8 damage and activating that first kill command. So that was a huge pickup, right, and some good foresight. And honestly, you had mentioned it early. It seemed like the game hinged on that turn 2 play where Language Hacker risked his Phase Stalker in a situation where he had a chance to remove the Dwarven Sharpshooter and push 2 with his Worgen Infiltrator and leave that on the board and not be vulnerable to an Eaglehorn bow and be able to pull out Explosive Trap later on in the game. So I don't know if that would have made much of a difference, but like that's the only play you can really look at as being like, well, that's the turn he had different options to be on the board differently. And so it's kind of hard not to look at that turn as maybe the swing one.
Yeah, and also Scrap Shot very much coming into play to help swing that mirror because that 4/4 Stone Tusk board was very hard to remove. So perhaps a little bit of play difference as well as deck building differences was able to give bloodyface that edge. Bloodyface is going to turn to Demon Hunter. We don't know if Language Hacker will stay on the Face Hunter. I have to imagine that if he's not going to be playing things like Demon or the regular Hunter, standard Hunter, Language Hacker does have another good option in Priest, and I was going to bring this up, that Priest is very good at taking apart those early game boards, largely because they have access to better AoE now, Breath of the Infinite and Holy Nova being better. However, a question mark that is over my head, TJ, is how does Highlander Priest factor in? Language Hacker, again, choosing to be a little bit different. It seems like that's kind of his style every single time. Like, maybe 2 or 3 decks similar to other people, but willing to always take risk with deck number 4 seems to be his MO. And once more, we see an unconventional choice to Highlander Priest instead of the traditional Galakar control.
Ends now.
Yeah, it seems like Language Hacker's forte is bringing that unexpected 4th deck. Last week it was Spell Druid, which it seems like he had a lineup that could reverse sweep Rogue. And he did exactly that, I think, in both of his matchups to go 2-0. And the Spell Druid came in really clutch on that instance. This week it's the Highlander Priest. Now, Highlander Priest it's hard to evaluate whether or not it's better against Demon Hunter. On one hand, you have way more utility. You can fit in more early game minions to fight for board. You have Zephyrus. You throw in like Frozen Shadow Weaver because you have the slots for it. You just have more minions in general, but you do have less consistent removal on time. You don't have the 2 Breath of the Infinites to be able to challenge that first push from the Demon Hunter. So only time will tell, but Language Hacker did link me his stats from practice with his Highlander Priest, and his win rate was insane, and that was against a wide variety of classes. Now, it looks like his strategy is to kind of corner Zoo Warlock, but if he can pick up wins elsewhere, that's a big boon for him, because even if you're favored against Zoo Warlock with all 3 of your decks, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to win the series. I know we parrot that a lot, but that's just the risk of the Conquest metagame. So we'll have to see. But Language Hacker does have a decent start. He's got some single target removal, AoE removal, as well as Zephyrus as that emergency, yep, I need to clear this thing now kind of thing. So Looking good for him thus far, but we all know that Demon Hunters can ramp up a lot of damage out of nowhere.
Yeah, Demon Hunters have a couple of different gears that they can shift into. So even though, yes, they are a tempo deck, and by all means, bloodyface is not playing very tempo heavy at the moment. Although he might have bigger issues on his hand if he's just going to fall behind on board. This Quicksand Elementalist allow him to get just a 3/5 to help contest the board. That's good enough. Even despite that, we've seen Demon Hunters really be able to play very combo-oriented by like piecing together big damage through Altruist, combining it through a couple turns of Metamorphosis. However, when you lose the board this early against Priest, that's where Priest is at their best, because then they don't have to be using their hero power on their own face. They can just use their minions to trade and then heal their minions and then stay ahead on the board for the rest of the game.
Yeah, and mention that their minions are just more plentiful in the Highlander Priest. Because there's only so many priest spells that you can play, so
right.
You have to play some neutral minions. And I guess Dark Prophecy also, even though it's a priest spell, sometimes not included in the normal Galakron priests. Definitely not included in the Resurrect priests, but pretty sure across all 3 regions of Grandmasters there was only one Resurrect priest. And of course it was Rivius.
Yeah, it's kind of funny to me that, Priest got a rework, and people are like, hooray, Priest is finally viable. And Priest is just doing just like control deck things. Everyone says, Priest is so toxic for the game. How is it still allowed to be existing as a class in Hearthstone? It's like, really? Like, I get that, not having a win condition directly feels like annoying in the sense that they can't win the game, so when you feel like it's determined, you're just kind of like dragging it out. But I mean, that's no different than all the other control decks we've had in card games, period. That's just what they do. Yeah. Just remove your stuff and wait for you to leave the game. And I think it's just probably the way Priest does it, which is very in your face about like, nope, you can't do this. Nope, you can't do that. Oh, I heal back to full with 5 renews in a row. He keeps discovering other renews. And I definitely understand the sentiment that that Priest can feel oppressive when they're in a dominant position, but alas, Language Hacker is not in that position just yet, although he does have this Holy Nova that can help him wipe the board once more. Is it time to pull a trigger, or does he want to take it even slower with Bone Wraith here?
Bone Wraith just feels like you're giving Bloodyface exactly what he wants, which is letting him get more value out of the Satyr Overseer, which means that he'd have to use the Holy Nova anyway at some point. So just getting it out of the way now and having Bone Wraith as backup is good. Also, I don't like the Zephrys in that position to try and play a little bit more greedy, because Zephrys can deal with just about anything, whereas Holy Nova can only deal with 2 health things.
Right. Well, the idea behind Bone Wraith that I liked was perhaps allowing Bloodyface to overextend onto the board if he had a Warglaze of Azeroth. Yeah, Bloodyface would have played that, gotten a lot of 2/2 Satyrs summoned, and then pushed some damage too. And I think Language Hacker said, I don't want to take that damage because we know what Demon Hunter is capable of. But we have seen some people who go for those greed plays to like bait their opponent into overextending, and then they won't have that Warglaze of Azeroth, for example, to go face everything. So far, so good. I definitely like this pan out here, and Language Hacker's plays have really paid off so far. And all he's doing is just trying to keep up the pace versus Bloodyface. Bloodyface plays stuff, Language Hacker removes. Rinse and repeat.
I think that I have not seen Savannah Highmane as a choice from Zephrys, even on 5, very often. That's quite interesting. He didn't take it, obviously, but there was some changes to Zephrys, just with his overall AI. Not anything super impactful, just making him smarter in some situations, or theoretically smarter in some situations.
Yeah, speaking of not impactful, that Gul'dan draw might not do anything right now. However, he does have one card in his hand that could tie everything together. That is Altruist, the Outcast. And the Language Hacker about to discover what's in the hand. Sees a bunch of cheap stuff, saw that the Crimson Cinder Runner has been discounted to 0. Remember, Madame Lazul has a copy of the card indicating that it will retain any buffs, any discounts. I wonder. And in this case, sees that Sigil Runner is 0. And also another like slight thing is that I-Beam doesn't cost 0.
Yeah.
So I-Beam is not a card discounted by the Gul'dan.
But he doesn't see the Altruist.
Yes, he doesn't see it. Doesn't see Metamorphosis either. And I would argue that those are two of the most important cards to identify to understand that this is within the capability of your opponent's burst range. So this is just a ton of damage if Bloodyface wants to. He could play everything except the Metamorphosis this turn. Or alternatively, he could greed even further and not play Altruist.
I think you follow up with Metamorphosis, right?
Right, and Language Hacker knows about the free Crimson Cinder Runner. He knows about the Twin Slice. And this is going to be big damage. You can see that Language Hacker obviously unhappy with the situation. Perhaps even thinking about how limited time Demon Hunter has with the balance patch. Now it's like, yeah, that's right, play your Cinder Runner for now.
You're going to be a 1-1, little buddy.
Potentially huge ramifications. Now, that's a ton of damage. He's going to put Language Hacker down to 10. Language Hacker had 3 minions on the board. He had 3 health or so?
Yeah.
And he's just going to die in 2 turns. To the Metamorphosis. Unless Language Hacker can find a way to stall, which he did. He drew one of the most important cards. He drew Kronks.
Oh, he's dead.
Oh, never mind.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, that is going to do it. And we talked about how Demon Hunter, if you just give them time, you can find a way because you can get these huge burst turns. And, you know, people might look at this game and say, wow, Demon Hunter is very strong. Balance patch is very warranted. And I agree for the most part. I would say that the one caveat to this is that you can do this against Priest with a lot of decks. You can do it with Rogue. You can like fall super far behind as Rogue and then just like take your time, just have 2 really powerful swing turns and they can't answer it. You can do it with Hunter. All kinds of variations of Hunter, actually. You can do it with Highlander Hunter with like huge brand combos or big damage. And today, I played a game versus Priest where the Priest was at like 25 health, and I was down to 2 cards, and he like spent all of his hand removing everything. It was like turn 7. I was like, wow, I'm gonna lose this game. But I drew Toxic Reinforcements, and over the course of 8 turns, I just kept hero powering. Priest didn't do anything, and I just killed them.
Yeah.
Priest gives you so much time to rack up a game plan and recover that even the most all-in decks like Face Hunter can piece together a comeback. So, if you ever feel like giving up against Priest, if you are at like 20 health and the Priest doesn't have a lot of cards and it's late in the game, don't give up. Priest sometimes just kind of folds because they don't have the right cards and they don't actually have a proactive game plan.
Yeah. Also, you know, they lack significant healing in the deck, right? Like, if you look at the Highlander version specifically, he has a Penance and a Renew. Yes, you have Apotheosis, which sometimes capitalize on, and Sandhoof Waterbearer. Both those things have like specific conditions that need to be met before they're even some healing. So that little bit of chip damage that you can push early on in the game will sometimes stick. So all you have to do is keep parity, wait for them to have a dead draw, which is exactly what Bloodyface was able to do because, like you mentioned, no proactive game plan. And that wasn't even a bad hand from Language Hacker, I don't think. He had Zephyrus, he had an AoE removal, he had minions. To be able to back it up, he had the board for most of the game. So we'll see. Well, we're going to go into the Zoo Warlock.
Oh,
wow!
Zoo Warlock versus Face Hunter. This matchup is quite contentious. When we were discussing about it, I think people have opinions on who is favored. But one thing was true, which was that Scrap Imp early on often dictated who won the game. Both ways, actually. Sometimes when you play double Scrap Imp, you're too far behind. But the second Scrap Imp, that was not a good draw from bloodyface to get that Soulfire.
This does mean, though, that lnguahackr gets to land an uncontested 5-6.
Right.
As much as double Scrap Imp is good, it does take a lot of time. You can't attack with the Scrap Imp. You have to rely a lot on draws from your hand. Let's say he had woven in a Battle Mage in this situation. He would have an answer with the Soulfire to this Phase Stalker if he wanted it. Also, these Scrap Imps aren't buffing any taunts. So sure, you can get all of these minions buffed up in your hand, but as long as they're not taunts, Face Hunter doesn't really... Oh, wow. That's second explosive trap.
Oh, no. lnguahackr, he's only playing 2 explosive traps. Face Hunter have adopted that as their deck building a strategy in order to guarantee that they get explosive trap, especially important against classes like Demon Hunter. And with that draw, it looks like lnguahackr just isn't destined to win this game. But it's not completely over, but it does feel very close to over, because the problem is that lnguahackr was hoping that, one, he'd be able to proactively develop before bloodyface, but he'd be able to activate that second Scrap Imp. The other hope would be if he's able to draw damage to potentially punish bloodyface for taking too long to get set up. And with the draw of the explosive trap, one, that's a card that he was supposed to get anyways for the hero power, so lost value there. But two, it's just an empty draw because he's gonna be struggling. That being said, he does have direct damage in the form of Arcane Shot and Kill Command, and if Scavenger Ingenuity lands on the Stone Tusk board, there is a possibility for lnguahackr to maybe burn bloodyface out of the game. But that's wishful thinking, considering that bloodyface has a lot of ways to add mega pressure onto the board. This Nightshade Matron is a 9/9 right now, although he doesn't even have to play it. He can play Magic Carpet instead.
Yikes.
Probably.
Now, the benefit for lnguahackr is that, excuse me, he does have a couple of turns. The second explosive trap will take enough off the board. Oh, and actually Rapid Fire is a great draw because now the Battle Mage will also die to explosive trap. And after this hero power that he weaves in this turn, he'll only have one more turn before the toxic reinforcements are able to be summoned.
Yeah.
So this will get close, honestly. It's just how much power can bloodyface put onto the board. That Nightshade Matron is a 9/9, Fiendish Servant's a 4/3, but that's it. He has a Soulfire for burn damage, and another Soulfire for burn damage.
Right. And bloodyface knew that there was going to be a second explosive trap. He saw the hero power with nothing. So he knew about this possibility, and he's got to activate this because of, well, he's got to eventually attack into it. He can't end this game without attacking the face. But lnguahackr does not have the Unleashed Hounds in hand. Still doesn't mean that he shouldn't pretend it doesn't exist.
Well, that does set up a 2-turn lethal, actually. It's 17 power on board.
Right, and the Fiendish Servant will pump the other stuff.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, because that would be his option, is to remove the Fiendish Servant. But again, that would just add the same amount of power on board because you can't remove that, and he can't remove anything else. He just has to hope that bloodyface doesn't have Soulfire, but he does. So most likely a loss here for lnguahackr.
Okay, he does find Stone Tusk Boar.
Oh, he would
Yeah,
have
I mean,
to trade.
If he was given another turn here, lnguahackr would be able to set up 2-turn lethal. If bloodyface did not have burst in the hand.
Well, okay, so Toxic Reinforcements is at 2, so we'll summon a hero power. So lnguahackr has to think he can kill off this Magic Carpet and still hero power.
I have no
Right.
time for games.
And
I
next
think that's
turn,
his priority.
so next turn he would have 6 from the leper gnomes,
A black arrow.
5, 6, 7 from hand. So that would be it.
Oh,
Is that enough?
I think so. Yeah, there's also a very cute way that he had lethal too, with soul firing his own fiendish servant, by the way,
I have
to
endured.
push a little
Wow.
bit extra damage. But that's going to do it. Bloodyface wins 3-0, which that entire series was about half as long as that priest mirror at the end of the Europe Grandmasters broadcast. So just to show you how fast these lineups can be, despite the fact that Language Hacker had a Highlander priest for a very long, drawn-out game, Bloodyface able to crush Language Hacker. And once more, some cool deck building from Bloodyface, some very fortunate draws, and turns out that Bloodyface is going to start off 3-0, exactly where he left off the previous season.
Yeah, that's a rough one for Language Hacker. It's hard to tell if it even would have mattered at the end of the day if he doesn't draw that second explosive trap. He would have had an extra card in hand, but would that have been enough to swing it over the edge? Maybe. He set up a lethal for himself, even if his Stone Tusk Boar got removed, which it would have if Bloodyface didn't just kill him. But talking with Language Hacker, he seemed pretty confident going into this week, especially since he was playing against 2 players that had the deck he was trying to target. But alas, sometimes that happens. And Face Hunter is a deck that kind of lives and dies by those early turns. And if you're not putting on the damage fast enough, then you'll just get outpaced and in that situation double scrap pimped and blown out of the game. So unfortunate loss. Now Bloodyface 3-0, starting off undefeated in Grandmasters. Well done.
Yep. So with that, we're going to go ahead and chug right along as we're going to get ready for